Hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing Songs for Madeleine by Fátima Carrero Ruiz, and I hope to shit I am pronouncing that right. But anyway, to start things off, I do have to actually state that this is not my regular genre. I don't normally do romance books. It's not that I don't like them. It's just not something that really calls to me like sci-fi or fantasy does, especially sci-fi. Ooh, sci-fi. But I'll get into how I feel about the book pretty quickly. So let's start things off with plot. So the plot is about Madeleine. She is a professional groupie who tours around with bands, sleeps with them, does all this other stuff, shows up as like girls in rapper music videos and stuff like that, in bikinis and whatnot, and she gets into this tour group with this band that's going to be on the quits fairly soon, the band called Miles Go By. And through her time with them, she finds that she is an excellent lyricist, although not exactly the greatest of singers. But from what's actually described, she could actually probably be a half decent singer with some practice and some training. Yeah, I don't know, maybe a sequel. I but yeah, and she learns how to love and all this stuff. Like I said, it's a romance book, and with romance books, you tend to have the standard beats that go along with it. But because it's a romance book, I'm not gonna put those beats and the predictability of said beats as any sort of a it's not going to lose points because of it, is basically what I'm getting at. So for plot, I am going to give it a 5 out of 10, or a 5 out of 5. Primarily because it's actually a fairly engaging plot. It actually does a very good job of dragging you in and keeping your interest. Like, it does its job very, very well. So, characters. Every character in this book is very, very well written, very, very individual and unique. There was at no point where a character was speaking and I'm going, I wouldn't think this character would say this. Like, Madeleine is very unique in her own way. Amy is very unique in her own way. Eric is very unique in his own way. Ryan is very unique in his own way. Zach and Luke, they don't really show up so much in the book. Like, they're there, but they don't really have a lot of speaking roles. But because the book is written in first person and from Madeleine's perspective, and she doesn't really associate too much with Luke or Zach, it's kind of expected and it's actually okay. So I'm not gonna really gripe on that, like, at all. The only real drawback is that there was a lot of times I really just wanted to smack Madeleine and Eric around and be like, you guys are being fucking stupid. Why are you doing this? Like, just talk to one another. Don't try and play your game with one another. Like, and Madeleine, stop feeling so goddamn sorry for yourself. You can do this. You've shown yourself that you can do this. You've shown everybody else that you can do this. Stop being so down on yourself all the time. And actually, that is a big part of her character anyway, and it's addressed later on and throughout the book as well. But it does tend to get to be a little much throughout the book. So, other than that little thing with Madeleine, the characters are very, very well portrayed. So I'm gonna give character a 4 out of 5, just because Madeleine was a little much after a while. But far from that, all the characters are very unique. They're all very well written. So, yeah, 4 out of 5 for characters. Research and imagination. Wow, was there ever a lot of imagination and research put into this? And I think there would have to be first for a topic like professional groupies, because it's not something that people would particularly even look at for the most part. Like, when you think of groupies, you think of the girls from the 80s who'd go backstage and they'd sleep with the band, they'd go into the tour bus and sleep with the band, and then they'd go back and do what they do for the rest of their lives. And that's not what's being portrayed here. And there's a lot of the emotional struggle. There's a lot of stuff that really goes on and really gets deep into the human psyche as well. And I mean, this isn't a book for, like, psychologists or anything like that to go, well, actually, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I mean, she's an author. She can only do so much research at the same time, but as far as I'm concerned, the amount of imagination and research that went into this book is a clear 5 out of 5. Like, hands down, she did an incredible job at this. So, good job. Writing. This is kind of where there's a little bit of a drawback. It's very clear that the original book was written in the author's native Spanish. And that's not a bad thing. Like, it's very clear that it is a translation, because a lot of the stuff doesn't directly translate and doesn't come off as how somebody who natively speaks English would speak. Like, there's a lot of times where Madeleine is introducing herself, and it's always, "Hi, my name is Madeleine." It comes out very stunted and robotic, but that's also a drawback of it being a translation. Like, I read a lot of the other translated novels, stuff like The Count of Monte Cristo or Les Miserables, and sometimes, yeah, it can also get a little stilted, because it's a translation, and a lot of times things don't translate directly. And to translate it and edit it in a way that people would speak in native English takes away from a lot of the stuff as well. The only real problem is that in a couple instances it did kind of take me out of it, but for the most part it really didn't. Like, it wasn't really any sort of real problem. But it was actually a very well written as what it is too. It's very easily read. Like, I don't normally get books that are about 400 pages long. Like, it's 400 pages per Kindle. But, I mean, I don't normally get books that big, so I'm going, holy fuck, this is going to take me a while. But, I mean, I finished this book in like 2.5 weeks. Because it kept my interest. I kept wanting to read it. I kept wanting to know what's going to happen next. How is Madeleine going to deal with this situation? What's Eric going to do with this situation? What sort of asshole thing is Ryan going to do next? I really wanted to know. So, despite the translation being a bit stilted, it is still very well written and still very, very well paced. So, all in all, I'm going to give writing a 4 out of 5. Like, she actually did a very good job of doing everything that she needed to do as an author in terms of the writing. It's just the translation itself that kind of drug things down, and not even that much, because, like I said, despite having to get kind of used to it at the beginning, once I got used to it, it really didn't take me out of the story at all. So, yeah, 4 out of 5 for writing. It was actually pretty decent. And the ending. This is normally where I would say something like spoiler alert, but there's really not much to spoil with it. Like, if you've ever read a romance novel, you kind of know the beats to it, you know. Boy meets girl, boy kind of learns to lighten up around girl kinds to learn how to love, or girl is taken out of her comfort zone a little bit as well. They start this awesome romance, then there's the big breakup scene. They're both kind of spiraling. They both get back together, and there's this whole other thing. But on top of all that, in terms of it being a romance book, there's a lot of the psychological trauma that Madeleine goes through, and I'm not going to spoil, the big psychological trauma that Madeleine goes through, but she does end up in therapy, and there's this one scene. Then I was reading it last night, and I damn near cried. Like, my eyes were getting a little misty. It was, if you don't want this spoiled, I'm going to actually put a time when I'm done this little scene here, but if you don't care, feel free to listen on. So, anyway, Madeleine and Eric, Madeleine's gone through all this stuff, and she had this really rough time, and Eric's just like, I want you to see yourself the way I see you. So he starts to take all these pictures as he's hanging out with her throughout the night. And, it goes into Eric's birthday, and Madeleine eventually asks to see these pictures. And he shows them to her, and she starts to see herself the way he sees her. Not as this groupie who's done all these awful things, but as this beautiful woman who is just this, who's funny and amazing and quirky and all these wonderful things, and I started to get a little misty-eyed. Like, it was actually a really good scene, and I loved it so much. So yeah, that scene really got me, and I loved it. I really did. The only real drawback with the ending is that it does tend to go on a little too long. Like, Madeleine's going basically through her entire experience with Miles Go By and everything that she's learned, and all I can really think is, I read the book, I know what happened, I know what's going on. I'm glad to see that it's finally gotten through her head, because, my god, that actually took some time, but, yeah, it goes on a little too long, I think. So, all in all, I'm going to give the ending 4 out of 5. It does a very good job, and for the sake that it got as emotional of an impact out of me as it did, is no small feat and should not be discounted in any way, or discredited in any way. So, it definitely earns its 4 out of 5 spot. So, all in all, Songs for Madeleine gets an 8.5 out of 10. It does a very, very good job. It is very entertaining. It does exactly what you want it to do, especially in terms of a romance book. And my god, dogs, really? Sorry, folks. But, yeah. Songs for Madeleine, very good book. Give it a read. Despite the translation, it's very, very good. I liked it a lot. And it's one that I myself would recommend to others. But that's about all I got for you guys today. So, have a good one.